Could the sun scars be related to like a group soul or group consciousness? I am aware of the collective consciousness of souls, like for instance around in the Jews in the period between the First and the Second World War, and how their fear that they all held in common was something that was exploited by the occult in Hitler's charge. So they had collective responsibility, and as someone was suggesting last night, that the experience for all of those to have that, you could think of the potential for that as having been karmic. You know, that a whole collection of souls had acquired certain experiences together or and individually, that if they lived out this thing, then some of this would be cleared. So, but I'm just surmising. I'm not speaking from knowing it. So it's a good question and I don't know. Okay, now, just have to look at my notes. This is my book, the outline. It's a good book. It is. Okay, so this principle of applying divine presence or light into trauma, you can use wherever your creative thinking might take you. So I've done it for lots of events for people in this lifetime. I described the child in the core transformation example, okay? But if you have a client who has a lot of trauma and you want to clear it out from this lifetime, you may not be clearing the causal events, the causal lifetimes where they acquired the pattern, but certainly you can bring relief and help them have a shift in their sense of well-being and feeling loved instead of beaten up all the time. So you have the client, they may have conscious recall of it, then you have them go to that event in this life as appropriate. You know, you're not going to take somebody back into a sexual abuse event and then we'll just deepen into that feeling there, you know, not going there, right? Or they're being bullied so that they're frightened for their life. Have them be in the catharsis around that as is appropriate, and be sensitive and simple about it, and you can't push the river. Just can't happen. So, but let's say you have a client who's back in an event. It might be in emotional abuse. It's very common to cause a whole shift in a person dealing with emotional abuse by a parent, by having them be in it, say they're 4 or 5 years old. And one of the beings I work with is called the Angel of Love of the Heavenly Mother. You go, well, how do you know that? And I said, it's hard to tell you how I know that, but it works, or she works. Every time when a client's in this and they're going, and they're having a hard time and they're in the scene and they're 4 years old or 7 or 12, I ask the Angel of Love of the Heavenly Mother to come in and touch this one and be with them in that state where they are right now. And then it's gone. Or a bubble appears of protection around them. The perpetrator can't hurt them. The bully is stunned. Or they may end up having compassion for the bully, because that's the nature of being impressed with divine presence. Yes?
When you're doing the session, when you're doing the session and you're, of course, seeing how things unfold, how are you deciding or perceiving whose help you should ask for? Like whether it's the heart of Elijah or who else?
Right. If it's a child, I ask for the angel of love, for the feminine, for the mother aspect to come in. If it's a single incident, I may use angels of the white light, just a collective invocation, or heart of Elijah. If there seems to be something where the client is stuck, they get into this thing and it's not moving, could be this life or another life, then I usually ask Elijah to come in. Now, also, when people get stuck, there's often attachments involved. So that takes you into a whole other area. And of course, I use angels to clear out attachments. I may use Elijah to come into the place of vulnerability if there was an agreement between the incoming or the attached dark being or attached earthbound spirit in a prior life or this life. For instance, kind of a classic, I had a guy who was 35, recovering alcoholic, and his father was an alcoholic and would come home after work every day and beat the crap out of him. That was a regular daily experience. So by the time he was 6 or 7, he was cowering in the basement like this, awaiting his father's return home from work. And prayed and prayed to Christian God as he understood it, and nothing happened. No protection came. So he asked the devil to come in. Of course, the devil went, sure. Came in and stayed with him until he was in my office, 30 years later. And then so we went back to that period because that demon wasn't going to leave until the client was ready and free in himself so that he didn't need it anymore. So regress back to that period just before the dark one came in and had him be in that event and so forth. And then I call on angel or Elijah to come in and touch this child in that experience, and it transmutes. And then we had to do more work around relationship with dad, which became very successful for him. And then when you do that, when you have a trauma event in a prior life or in childhood that draws the attachment of a dark being or an earthbound spirit with dark ones attached, then and you're here in this life. When did you come in? Oh, been with him for lifetimes. Can't let him know what he's really like. I'm going to be in his face all the time and mess with him. One of those characters. Just a second, and then, sorry, and so then you go back to where just before that wise guy came in, and bring healing to the propensity or the vulnerability, whatever it takes, so that that's not an issue. And then the dark one disappears from the client's history, does not show up.